Good morning. You got a seat? My name is Clayton Trussell. If you have a copy of your scriptures, break it out. It's also going to be on the screens behind me. If you don't, that's okay. We're in Matthew chapter 10 today. And it says this. Verse 1. Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out, to heal every kind of disease, every kind of sickness. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these. The first, Simon, who's called Peter, Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who would betray him. Let me pray. God, we love you. Thank you for this time and space you've created for us to come and sit under your word. God, I pray that what is spoken today has nothing to do with me, but it's everything to do with you. That we would see your character, that we would see your authority, your power, the very words of life that you want us to understand and comprehend, and that changes us from the inside out. That we become more like you. And in being more like you, we would do the things that you've called us to do. And that we would understand what those purposes are. Would you teach us that today? Would you show us, God? And if you're up for it, would you just pray for yourself? Say something like this to God. God, I need to hear from you this morning. Please teach me something. And if you would pray for me, that God would speak through me, and that it would be clear, it makes sense to you. God, we love you. Use this time as you see fit. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, in college, I went to a military academy, and the first year that you're there, you are directed and ordered in every element of your life. How you stand, how you sit, how you talk, how you move, all these things are coordinated and commanded by someone above you. And so your life is not your own. You are a product of the Citadel system, is what they call it, the fourth class system. As a fourth class cadet, right, fourth is the lowest you can be, you would have to march and move and do all these things according to your squad sergeant. They were your cadre. They were the people that were in charge of you, that gave you your barking orders. And one of the things that was very peculiar about the Citadel was a thing called reporting. And what that meant was, if you had to report to your sergeant's room or an upperclassman's room, there was a certain manner in which you did it. And you only did it if they called you to them, which is weird because in that kind of system, especially 18 years of your life, you're allowed to engage and talk to anybody you want to all the time. When you enter into this system at the Citadel, you don't speak unless spoken to. And you certainly do not engage or have anything to do with upperclassmen unless they address you first. And so typically what happened was I would be asked to report to someone's room, and it's a quote-unquote behind closed doors scenario. And what that meant was I was always getting beat up and smoked for it, because when you have to report to someone's room, it's because you did something wrong. Like I wasn't shined up, I was late, I didn't know something I was supposed to know, I didn't eat fast enough, whatever it was. I would always get the message, Trussell, report to my room after lunch. Trussell, report to my room after formation, whatever the case was, right? And so I always knew I'm just about to go get messed up because I am a mess up, and that's what happens. So I always know that going into this scenario, what happens. So what happens is they tell you to report to your room, and there's their screen door in front of you, and the barracks is this like huge square, right? And all the doors on the outside, and so you would figure out which door is your sergeant's door, and that doesn't take very long because you get yelled at if you go to the wrong door. I found that the hard way. So you walk up and you knock really loud twice. You about face, you take 3 steps back, you about face, and then you say, Sir, Mr. Calori, sir, Cadet Trussell reporting as ordered, sir, and then you wait. And then however long it takes for them to get off their chair or their bed or whatever and open the door and tell you to get in there, or they don't even get up, they just yell really loudly, get in here! And then you open the door and you go in there and you take 1 step in front of the room and then you stand there and brace yourself for whatever it is, the onslaught that's about to happen to you. So, as this happens all the time, I always know why I'm there. They don't have to tell me, but they do tell me, just so I know you're an idiot, and this is why you're getting punished. And so one time after lunch formation, I'm about to go back to my room, and my cadre sergeant grabs me, and he says, Trussell, report to my room, 10 minutes. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm going through the Rolodex in my mind of all the inventory of the last 12 hours, and like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I can't think of anything that I did wrong. Like, usually it's an obvious screw up, but I'm like, no, file not found. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So I just go up there as ordered in 10 minutes, whatever, I report, and he yells at me to get in there, and I roll in there, and I'm just like, it must be so bad that I don't even know what it is, right? And so I go in there, and he's like, Trussell, relax, stand at ease. And so I'm like, yes, Sergeant? He was like, all right, this is what's going to happen. I am going to put you in charge as team leader over your little squad. There were 6 of us. You're now going to be the team leader over these 6. You're going to have them memorize this piece of information from your little guide-on book. You're going to do this specific thing with your brass and your brass buckle, the way it's supposed to be shined. I want the shoes to look a certain way. And then when you stand shoulder to shoulder, this is the order in which I want to put you in. Okay? Do you understand what I'm telling you? I was like, sir, yes, sir. He goes, okay, this is coming from me to you, to them. I'm not going to deal with them. I'm going to deal with you. You deal with them, I deal with you. Sir, yes, sir. So I went down there, and before the next formation, we all gather in one of our little rooms, whatever, and the 6 of us are in there, and I'm like, okay, guys, this is what's about to go down. And I give them the spread. And the natural rebuttal for an 18-year-old is, who are you? Like, what? No, like, he didn't tell us this. And then I said, I just reported to his room. He told me what he wanted to do. And I'm telling you, this is what we're going to do. And the funny thing was, as soon as I said that, they responded. And it was an immediate, okay, let's go. Why? Because I had the authority of someone greater than me working through me into someone else's life. Why do I tell you that? Because that is the pivotal moment we are in the scriptures, where we see the 12 disciples, having been walking with Jesus, are coming to an integral part of their relationship with Jesus, where we're going to see that some things have been building up for a time, and now Jesus is about to change the dynamic between the 12 of them. And that has implications for them, and has implications for us, and we need to know what they are. The first thing you see in the text is he calls 12 disciples. What does that mean? Well, these were 12 guys. If you've looked at any of the past scriptures in Matthew, and I love John, because John chapter 1 just gets right into it from the beginning. Like, boom, here's half of them, and this is how they met Jesus. And you just get going, and he gets real fast into it. So there's a moment in time where Jesus is walking, and he grabs guys left and right, and he says, you follow me. You, get up, follow me. Hey, out of the boat. You're done. You come with me now. And he starts ordering people to follow him. And the crazy thing is, they do. They stop what they're doing, leave everything and everyone, and they just start walking after Jesus. What kind of man is this? And you're presented with this question. Who talks like this? And then you see him as they're walking around. You see there's a relationship that he's intentionally building. And that's true of all of you. You guys know that's how relationships work. What is the basis of relationship? The basis of relationship is you get to know somebody, just know them like their name, right? And then what? You spend time with them. And that time is always moving towards something, right? Usually, it's always deeper commitment and intimacy. That's how relationships work. You see that in dating, you see that in friendships with your best friends. There was a time where you barely knew each other, and you just hung out, playing video games, or going to the store, or whatever, playing sports together. And then over time, that compounded, and you became really close. You became really tight. And you started to trust and understand and know things about this person that you never knew before. And it's always moving to some place and to a greater depth of intimacy. And the disciples are walking with Jesus, and that's what they're getting. They're getting this relationship with Jesus, which is, he has called me. I am called by him. To what? to come be with him. John 1 says it. He grabs Nathanael and he grabs Philip. And he says, what are we doing with this so-called Messiah? You gotta come and see. You gotta come and see. The first thing Jesus says to any of them is, just come and see. Come and see what I'm about. Come and see what I'm like. And just spend time with me. And they go and they spend time with him. But along the course of that trajectory, there's a moment in time for every single one of them, except for Judas. Every single one of them, for 11 of them, except for Judas, they will come to believe certain qualities and characteristics about Jesus that is true of no one else. They become to know that he is the Son of God, that he is the one, the Messiah, the chosen anointed one from old, the ancient one that we've been talking about for centuries. He's here. He has come. I believe that you're him. And I love when when Philip goes and grabs Nathanael, and Nathanael is brought to Jesus. They have this beautiful conversation, this interaction between Jesus and him. And it says this in John 1:48. Nathanael says, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered and said to him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." For Nathanael, it was like instant. It was like, bro, I was doing nothing under a tree in the middle of nowhere. No one could have seen me. How did you know I was just sitting there? I don't have a category for that. You must be the chosen one, the King of Israel, the one I've been waiting for my whole life. And he gets it that fast. The others, not so much. It takes time to develop that. Simon Peter, he has a moment with Jesus where he's in the boat. And Jesus says, "Hey, go ahead and lower your nets down. Bring up the catch." Whatever, weirdo. He does it, and it like sinks the boat. There's so many fish. And you see Simon drop to his knees, and he says, "You are the chosen one of God. You are the Son of God." And he has that moment with Jesus. But across every single continuum, except Judas, all of them come to that understanding and that belief that Jesus is who he says he is. And in John 6:6, I always read this and was like, I wonder what John 6:6 says. Ooh, like, whatever. Anyways, and so it says this: "As a result of many of his disciples withdrew and were not walking with him anymore." Ooh, odious, right? What happened? 67. "So Jesus said to the 12, 'You don't want to go away also, do you?' Simon Peter answered him, 'Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have believed and come to know that you are the Holy One of God.' Jesus answered them and said, 'Did I myself not choose you, the 12, and yet one of you is a devil?' Now he meant Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, for he of the 12 was the one to betray him." 11 out of 12 of them, at some point on the journey with Jesus, came to the realization and full belief that he is the Son of God. You are the chosen one, the Holy One of God. I have come to believe that. And that's true for a lot of you in this room. You had an experience with Jesus. You had a moment with the scriptures. And I love how C.S. Lewis talks about it, because most people want to deduce that and reduce it to a single night on your knees in the dark where you prayed a prayer and it was a very rote, ritual thing that was spelled out, and that's how you knew I was saved. I love how C.S. Lewis talks about it, because he talks about maybe, but usually it's more like this. At some point, you are walking along your normal life, and you turn around and you look back and realize that's not who I am anymore. And those fundamental beliefs that I had, I have somewhere along the road let go of them, and I have grabbed onto something entirely new. That's how he says a lot of us come to that realization of, maybe there was a distinct moment I can remember, but for a lot of us, we're like, I think it was sometime when I was 17. Maybe when I was like 28. Like somewhere, I don't know. I just remember, I just know. I now know that these are the very words of eternal life. and that Jesus is who he says he is. And that's a beautiful thing. And the disciples got that. But there's a preposition that Jesus wants to use that's going to change the dynamic of the 12 of them. What's a preposition? Let's go back to 5th grade. A preposition is a word that usually precedes a noun that gives you a relationship to the other words in that sentence. Like, I am next to the ocean. I am under a bridge. I am on a table. I am in a classroom. I am by the doorway. Right? These prepositions help establish a relationship to the other noun and the verb. And so what we see in the very beginning of the scriptures is that Jesus has called them to be by them. You are called by me to be by me. That's the first relationship that he's calling them to. And now you're going to see him switch that, and now he's going to call them to him. Fundamentally different. To be called by somebody, to be by them, and to be called to them. That's a different category of relationship. You don't do that with a lot of people, right? You don't let anybody into your home, right? You might have some people that you know at work or you know at the gym that you understand some things about them. They showed up in your living room unannounced. You're like, you got 5 seconds before something bad happens to you. You better get out of here, bro, right? Not everybody gets to be called to me. And I don't call everybody to myself. And Jesus is like that, right? And so we're going to see, what does that look like for the disciples? But before he gets into that, just note that there is a significant amount of time that transpires between these two relationships. I don't know if you caught it in the actual text. In verse 1, he refers to them as disciples. In verse 2, he changes that and he addresses them as apostles. That's significant. That is a change in status. That is a different category of relationship. And it happens in one sentence. So just know, there's always a predetermined amount of time with the Lord before he changes that relationship and calls you to something. Before he ever calls you to do anything, you are just meant to walk with him. Just get to know him. Get really good at knowing who Jesus is. And that looks different for everybody. That for Moses and David in the Old Testament, what did that look like? They were shepherds. What did that mean? You go out in the field, and I want you to take care of some sheep. You get really good at managing some wild animals and some flock before I ever give you a person to lead. Before I ever call you to be in charge of my people. You need to go out to the wilderness and spend some time learning some character, some fundamental skills, and some basic understanding before I'm going to put you on a platform and have you lead my people. Paul's the same way. Who was Paul? Paul was a Pharisee. He had a doctorate degree in biblical studies. Wow. Didn't know Jesus. Jesus radically grabbed him and changed his life on the road to the place he was going to go murder Christians. And then what does it say? He continued on after having this complete revelation and change in relationship with Jesus. He continues on to Arabia, and he stays in Damascus. It says he stays there for 3 years. What is he doing for 3 years after meeting the risen Lord? Talking to people in Damascus? Just mixing it up with the locals? Showing them, hey, the scriptures are true. This is what I used to believe and be, and now this is who I am and what is actually true. And he stays there for 3 years. And then what? It says that he rolls over to Peter, and he stays with Peter at Cephas' house for what? 15 days. It says 15 days with the Apostle Peter, the rock that the church was built on. And then what? He's roped into ministry, and God sends him out. There is a determined amount of time that God will hold you and keep you in obscurity before he ever puts you in charge of anybody. And that's good. We need that, and we like that. Why? Because there's nothing more intolerable than a person with authority that has no idea what they're doing. Some of you work for people like that. Some of you have employees and coworkers like that. And it's infuriating and it eats you up on the inside. Why? Because they were given tasks and responsibility and power and authority, and they are completely misusing it. They are terrible people. They aren't doing anything productive. They're always making a mess of things. They're coming to you to solve it and fix it. And you're not even in charge. And there's nothing more intolerable than grabbing an immature person and thrusting them into power. We hate that. And there's a good reason for it. Because God knows we are wired to run with our preconceived notions and our predetermined emotions. You have an emotional bend. You have a mindset. You have a prefixed view of the world. And left to your own devices, you will grab power and authority and you will turn it in. And you will use it for you. And we all seen that happen. And God knows that about us. And so for the grace of you and the grace of everybody else in your wake, He will hold you back and keep you in an obscure, nowhere place for a while. Why? Because He wants to forge character into you. He wants to cultivate the fruit of His Spirit in you. Do you have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control? Do you have any of those things? I think about that all the time. There's been various moments in my life where, man, like I was either thrust into a leadership position or I just kind of worked into it at some point in time. And man, over and over again, I'm always just confronted with what are the qualifications for this? And especially when it comes to religious things, right? Because there's nothing worse than the abuse of religious power, right? C.S. Lewis said, of all the bad men in the world, religious bad men are the worst, aren't they? And what do you do in a movie to make the main character or the antagonist or the villain, how do you make them just sinister? You give them some religious quality. You give them some religious adherence that they hold fast to. And then they go and perpetrate heinous things. Oh, that makes your stomach twist, right? And God knows that. And I knew that about myself, so I was always going back to, man, what does Galatians say? What does Galatians say? What are the qualities that God is supposed to bring out in me? And I just got really good at memorizing the fruits of the Spirit. Why? So that I could keep track of, are these evident in my life? And if I don't think they are, at least I have a word that I can specifically pray for. Self-control, peace, gentleness. I am not a gentle man, and I must pray that specifically, right? Do you do that? Is that something that you do? Is that a natural rhythm in your life? As you think about walking with Jesus, getting good at knowing Him, before you're ever in charge of anybody or meant to ever lead anybody or be in any position of authority whatsoever, are you good at His Word? Do you have to be a scholar to know this stuff? No, I'm not a scholar. I never went to school for this. I never went to seminary. What did I do? I just spent a lot of time reading the Scriptures. And I just got really good at knowing what this says. And in time, God cultivated those things into experiential skill. And He'll do that in you. He has done that in some of you, and you know that. And for some of you, man, not everybody is meant to have authority. And we know that. Not everyone sitting in this room ought to be a leader in charge of anybody. And some of you should be, but not right now. Some of you should be, not yet. Why? Because there's still a growth curve that you have to endure. There's a process that God wants to take you through to forge you into a good leader, someone that can lead a Bible study well, that can stand in front of people and actually have something of value to say to them. I was so nervous the very first time I was ever had to speak at anything. Because I'm like, what am I gonna say? Like, I'm nobody. Like, I don't know anything. I didn't go to special training for any of this. Like, what? Like, I'm not even a pastor. Like, what do you want me to do? And God humbled me so great. And this is so funny because people come to me all the time. They're like, man, like, first of all, you talk really fast. Second of all, like, man, you think of things that I never thought of, and I'm like how do you do that? And they always want like a method, like how. Give me the method of how you create a sermon, whatever. Spoiler alert: this is how it happened. It happened coaching 5 and 6 year old soccer. That's how it happened. When I was 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 years old, for 4 years, my best friend Mark, him and I would just go around with the soccer company and we would just put on clinics across the greater Houston area. And it was a 5-day clinic where we taught 5 and 6 year olds how to kick a ball and do a little dribbling, and we roll around the ground with them and let them kick it at us in the face and laugh. And then the hard part, that was the easy part. The hard part was we had to sit them down in the shade, and their rest period was 15 minutes to have a little cup of Gatorade and listen to me tell them a story from the Bible. That was the hardest thing I had ever done in my entire life. But God grabbed me and he grabbed Mark, and that was the first thing he ever had us do. 8 kids, 8 5 and 6 year olds picking their nose, playing with butterflies. And I had to learn how to grab a story and know it so well that I could keep the attention of a 5-year-old for 15 minutes. Hard thing to do. And God had me do that for 4 years. I did that for 4 years. And then he grabbed Mark and he threw Mark at a huge church in the Woodlands and gave him a ministry and let him run with that. And then he brought me over for a year, and that didn't quite work out so well. That's fine. But man, he took me and he's moved me to all manner of different Bible studies and different seminars and different beach camps and all kinds of stuff where God's let me have a voice into other people's lives. And it was the grace of God that he did that. He kept me in obscurity on a soccer field where the blast radius was very small. And it's the grace of God for him to do that to you. It was the grace of God to do that in me. And that's what God is doing with the disciples. It says that right before the great Sermon on the Mount, what's the sentence right before he starts the Sermon on the Mount? He began to teach them. He turns to his disciples and he turns to the other disciples, not the 12, but all the other disciples, and he says, and he began to teach them. God is teaching his disciples all manner of things. And as he's cultivating them and growing them, now it's time. Now I'm sending you. Now I am taking everything that we have learned, everything you have seen, and I'm giving you a task. And I'm putting it on your shoulders, and you're going to run with it. And it's a heavy task. And so what does it say? It says in verse 1, he summoned them, and he gave them authority. So he summons them, and he gives them authority. I love that word. The word for summon is proskaleo. It means to call someone to yourself, or literally to summon. And you only use that word in like what context? A king and his subjects, right? I summon my people. I summon the guard. I summon this servant, this person to me, right? A king says that. And so you're like, wait, where does Jesus get the gall to grab that kind of connotation of a kingly word to summon his subjects and apply it to me? Apply it to the 12. Where does he get that idea? Well, if you've not been tracking for the last 9 chapters, what have we seen Jesus doing? Walking around, grabbing people with leprosy, grabbing people blind, and he commands the illness and disease, and it leaves. Then he commands the wind and the waves, and nature obeys him. Then the spiritual moment comes. Demon-possessed guy. Not an easy Sunday. What does he do? He commands that to come out of the guy, and it goes into a swarm of pigs, and the pigs run down into the bank, right? And then if that's not enough, what's the ultimate test? Death itself. And a little girl is dying, dead, on a bed, and what does he do? He walks up, and with his mouth, Talitha kum, and she gets up. She responds. Death can't overpower this guy. There is something altogether different about this man. He is not like you. He is not like me. And for the last 9 chapters, he's been walking and showing why he has the authority to tell people what to do. And that's a comforting thing. I want you to know that. Jesus acts like he has the right to tell you how to live your life. But when you read the scriptures, it kind of looks like he does. Because the physical, nature, the spiritual world, death itself responds to his commands. That's a good point. Maybe I'll lean in a little bit to this guy. So what does he do when he summons them to himself? This is interesting because as a king, you can bestow your authority. You can abuse your authority and have them do whatever you want them to do. He could have said anything he wanted to. What does Jesus choose to do? He gives them authority. He gives them special privileges. He blesses them. He doesn't come to crush them and command them and berate them and yell at them and get your life together, get your act together. He comes and he says, what I have, I'm giving to you. What are you giving me? I'm giving you authority, and I'm giving you the ability to cast out demons, the unclean spirits, and to heal every disease and every manner of sickness. Why? That's weird. Well, if you think about the context of what's been going on, Jesus has always been talking a good game. But it's not just talk, it's walk. And so what does Jesus do? He grabs his words and then he does something with them. He says, you have heard it said, I say. And he starts talking about how to live your life. And then what? He has miracle after miracle after miracle to show these aren't empty words. These are not empty phrases I'm throwing out there. And so for the disciples, that's important because they're about to walk into the public square and start talking about Jesus. And that can go one of two ways. It can be, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about this person. Or usually, specifically because of the Pharisaical regime that was running around, right? When you come in talking about a new person, new philosophy, new idea, especially as it pertains to God, you are going to get immediate backlash. You are going to get shut down quick. So Jesus gives them the ability to heal people and cast demons out. Why? So you would believe the message. That you would believe, I'm not making this up, bro. Like, I can't do this unless God is with me. What did Jesus say? What do you have that you did not receive? Do you have anything that I didn't give you? And that's the point he's pushing across. You don't have anything that I didn't already give you. But I'm giving it to you for a purpose. What's the purpose? Well, you're going to see in Mark chapter 3 and Luke chapter 6 weigh in on this exact moment. And it says that he's going to send them out. And specifically, he's going to send them out to preach. You don't get that in Matthew. It just says that they're going to heal and cast out demons. In Mark and in next week's verse, actually, I'm not going to spoil it, but he's actually going to send them and say, you're going to preach as you go. So there's a message going out with this. But where does he start? It says that he goes to a mountain by himself and he prays all night. Fascinating. Look what it says. In Luke 6:12. It says, it was at this time that he went off the mountain to pray, and he spent the whole night in prayer to God. What are you praying about all night long? That's a long time to pray. I don't know. I do know one thing he's praying for. What's one thing that he is praying for? The previous verse that we just ended in Matthew 9. And what did it say? The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. Jesus is telling them, hey, the fields are ripe. People are ready to change their lives and live for something more than themselves. And they want a better way to commune with God. And I'm bringing it in. But not a lot of people are going to want to go out and do this. So you need to pray that God's going to send people to send this message. And the beautiful thing about Jesus is, he never asks you to do something that he's not going to do himself. And the guy goes up on a mountain all night long and he prays. He prays to his Father. And what's he praying? He's at least praying for the one thing that he just talked about. Send workers into the harvest. And then what? You turn around, the next sentence, after he's finished praying for the Father to send workers into the harvest, what's he going to do? Grab 12 guys and send them out into the harvest. Jesus never calls you to something that he himself is not willing to do. That's a good leader. That's a good man. You want to follow a guy like that. You can trust your life with a guy like that, right? So, he grabs them and he gives them all of these unique, special powers. Just note, this is descriptive, not prescriptive. What do I mean by that? This is an account of what Jesus gave to the disciples. This is not something he's given to you and he's not given to me. If you can heal miraculously, please let me know. I got problems. I got things I need healing. Please let me know. I would love that. But you don't see this in very many other places in scriptures. Why? Because it's describing a relationship and it's describing what's happening for the disciples. It is not prescribing what you are meant to go do. Sorry to be a bummer. But there are some good tidings that come with this. What is that? Well, Jesus is calling you to himself to be sent out. What are you being sent out for? Probably not to cast out a demon. Probably not to heal every kind of disease and sickness. The scriptures are loaded with all the good things that you are called to do. And here's just a short list, real quick. Titus, James, and Peter weigh in on this really well. It says this in Titus 3:8. This is a trustworthy statement concerning these things that I want you to speak confidently, so that those who have believed in God will be careful to engage in good deeds. These things are good and profitable for men. James 3:13. Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior his deeds in gentleness and wisdom. And then Peter will say, keep your behavior excellent among the Gentiles, so that the very thing they slander you as evildoers, they may, because of your good deeds, as they observe them, glorify God in the day of his visitation, and sanctify Jesus Christ as Lord in your heart. Always being ready to make a defense for everyone who gives an account for the hope that is within you, yet with gentleness and reverence, and keep a good conscience, so that the thing which you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ will be put to shame. What are you called to as a follower of Christ? You are called to take the gifts and talents and skills and abilities that you have, and you are meant to bless others with them. You are meant to lean in to other people and for their good and to help them. You are meant to engage the culture. What does that look like? All manner of things. You have a completely different and unique set of skills that I don't. And so does she, and so does he. And you can engage with the culture in a way that I can't. And you know people that I'll never meet. And you'll run in circles that I have no business being in and I'll never enter into. But you do. You have access to those people, and you have a unique way of helping and being a blessing to them. What does that entail for you and the way you go to work? Most people, when they go to work, I go in and I clock in, I sit down, I deal with my emails at my desk with my list, and everybody else, that's your problem. Right? We all knew some family members like this, right? When it was time to make the Thanksgiving meal, the Christmas meal. When it's a birthday, what's supposed to happen? Everybody comes together for the good of that person or the good of each other. And we all do something to make it happen. And what's the worst? When one person doesn't do anything. One person refuses to go empty the trash. Refuses to grab a spoon or set the table or whisk something in a bowl, right? That's the worst, and we hate that. Why? Because you have a gift, you have an ability, you have the means to help, and you're choosing not to. And that's the human condition. We all do that. We are all prone to take the things that we are good at, the things that we have, our resources, our talents, our abilities, and do what? Serve me. Make me happy. Have fun with me. Do what I want to do. And everybody else, that's your problem. You'll figure it out. The Christian is meant to press into the culture, to be a healing balm, that your words bring life. Your hands help heal. What, in a literal way? No. But what you do with your hands can help restore somebody, can help fix some problems in their life. And it's not about the doing. Just please know that. Christianity was never built on the principle of do this, don't do that, avoid that, ew, gross. Like, it was never meant to be built on a set of rules and regulations of do's and don'ts. That's exhausting. That's the legalism. That's the pharisaical way of trying to earn your goodness and right to know God. Jesus comes in and says, no. What is the fundamental thing that makes you you as a believer? You are tethered to me. You are deeply connected to me. And when you're deeply connected to me, then what happens? Then you go and you do. What, to earn my place in good standing with God? No, but because I already have it. I already am loved. I already am accepted. I already have everything I need. I already am made whole in Christ. And I don't operate out of a scarcity mindset. I operate out of what the disciples had. I have the very words of life and the authority of Jesus spoken over me. And I go in confidence that he who sent me is the one who is able to do the things that I am sent to do. Because I'm so special? Because I'm so smart? Because you're so valuable? Because you're just a go-getter? No. That's not the message. That's a terrible thing. There's 100 books in Barnes & Noble you can go and get about be a better you, and you're good all by yourself. You don't need no man. You don't need anybody to fix you. Just go, shine. Go grab one of those. They're all saying the same thing. And do any of those things ever work? No. Because if they did, we would see that permeated throughout the culture. And it would be working for everybody. But it doesn't. So, how does God use the disciples, and how does he use you? He grabs you, you learn from him, you walk with him, and then he sends you to do the good things. Why? So that people will compliment you? No. What did it say in Titus, and what did it say in Peter? That as you go, you will speak confidently the things that I have taught you, that you will have a defense, you will have a reason for the hope that is within you, and your good deeds back that up. Nobody likes the hypocrisy that permeates the church. Nobody likes it. Many of you have been to so many churches, have been in so many groups, and a lot of the reason that you're not there anymore, a lot of the reason that you're not friends with certain people anymore, is because you couldn't stand another day of listening to them regurgitate some biblical, scriptural, whatever, and then they go and do something completely contrary to the Word of God. And they had no remorse at all about it. They could care less. That hypocrisy eats at us, and we hate that, and God hates it too. God hates that too. And Jesus sends them, and he sends you. What? With the very words of life, but also with your conduct, your behavior, the way you engage and treat people is supposed to back up the message and the person that sent you. That's how it works. So, I love Good Will Hunting for this reason, because there's a lot of psychology in Good Will Hunting, the movie, but one thing they did really well in this is you get two different characters. Not Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. I'm talking about Robin Williams and the other professor, Gerald Lambeau, right? Sean, played by Robin Williams, brilliant psychologist who is a therapist and a teacher at MIT of psychology and those studies. And then you have Professor Lambeau, who is the Fields Medal winner in mathematics. And he teaches mathematical proofs, mathematical theories, and he has this whole thing going on over here. Two insanely brilliant men with giftings beyond anybody else in their field. And what do you see throughout the whole movie? Both of them grab those gifts and those talents and those abilities, and they both use them in very different ways. What do you see Professor Lambeau doing? He's always hitting on and flirting and being weird with the college girls and using his math and his wisdom to try and seduce them, and it's cringy and weird. And then he takes that and then he projects it onto Matt Damon, onto Will Hunting. And he grabs him and he says, hey, I see potential in you, I see value in you, you come be with me and study with me. I'll keep you out of jail. And Will goes, and he starts to sit with him. But then you see what? You see that Professor Lambeau is really not interested in Will as a person. He's really interested in using Will to be everything that he never was. That he's twisting him into a version of himself that he wishes he was. And he's trying to conform and make Will do things and be things according to what is filling a void inside of him. And it's really twisted. And at the same time, what's happening? He's also meeting with Robin Williams. And he's working out some things in his life. But what do you see about Sean that's so different than Professor Lambeau? Sean presses in, and he is deeply interested in Will's life. And he is deeply engaged in the severe hurts of his abusive father, the problematic tendencies that he has that are ruining his relationships now. And he's trying to set him up for success and trying to get him on a path that's going to move him with a purpose and a future. And you see those two different relationships playing out all throughout the movie. And they're each spending equal time with Will. But you see there's a culmination at the end of the movie where Sean and Professor Lambeau are talking about Will. And they get this heated, yelling argument. And what does Robin Williams start blasting Professor Lambeau for? He says, I see what you're doing to him. I see what you're doing to him because you tried to do it to me. You're trying to twist him and take that good, fragile, vulnerable boy and try to make him into this little puppet, into this thing that he never was meant to be. And then Professor Lambeau is going back and forth about, oh, you don't know. And he goes, no, you are. And it's not about you, you arrogant cuss word. It's about the boy. It's about the boy. And right when he says that, you see that Matt Damon is standing there and he's listening to the whole thing. And he is realizing these two men, so severely gifted, so much authority, so much power, both looking at me, both spending time with me, they chose me. And yet, this guy over here, he really doesn't value me or care about me at all. Does not have my best interest in mind. I'm going to go with him. I'm going to go with Sean. And I'm going to lean into him, and I'm going to press in and listen, and I'm actually going to start doing the things that he wants me to do. And that's the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be like that. You're supposed to take the raw materials, the talents, the resources, all the things that God has given you that other people might have, might not have, doesn't matter. And you're meant to what? Leverage them for the good of other people. That you just so very much care about them. You very much care about their soul. That what? That they might reach out and find God, Acts says, though he is not very far from any one of us. That they might, through you, you might get to be the hands and the feet of Jesus that connect them to him. Through what? Your good deeds. The good things that you do. And there's so many varieties and different ways that you can do that. What does that look like? I don't know. Pray about it. Ask the Lord of the harvest. That's what Jesus says. Ask the Lord of the harvest. Where do you want me to go and to who? And what can I do? God, show me what I'm good at. God, show me what I have at my disposal that you've given me. And then help me to leverage that for the good of other people. That's how we're meant to be. And so then in verse 2, we're going to see the shift. And it's just going to name the apostles. And it just says this very quickly. The first, Simon Peter. Andrew, his brother. James, son of Zebedee. John, his brother. Philip, Bartholomew. Thomas, Matthew, the tax collector. James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus. Simon, the zealot. Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. This is not... It is. It's a random group of dudes. But it is not random that they were selected. Isn't that crazy? That you could not get a weirder bunch of guys on the same team. All various backgrounds. All manner of lifestyle. And yet, they're all brought together for a common purpose. Is that not us? Is that not what you are meant to be? Are you not meant to be knit with other people that look nothing like you? That are so very different from you? That are difficult and have a different attitude? Maybe a different political affiliation than you? Aren't we meant to be composed of all kinds of different people? Jesus thought so. He saw it fit to grab 12 completely different, random, scattered guys and make them his posse. Make them the vessel to build the church on. Isn't that comforting to know? That you don't have to have a pedigree. You don't have to come from nobility. You don't have to be anything special in and of yourself. Your daddy doesn't have to be somebody for you to be somebody. Jesus grabs people that, if you just look on the paper, they have no business even being in the room. And that's comforting, right? Because I don't either. And if you're honest, you don't either. You did not earn your seat at the table. Jesus called you. Jesus chose you. Just like he chose the 12. It wasn't up to them. They didn't apply. There's no application process. It was the mercy and grace of God to grab them and pull them in. And so a couple caveats for you to know about these 12. The first 4 that you see are brothers, which is ironical and purposeful at the same time. Why? Because I think there's something about brotherhood that Jesus wants us to grasp. Why? Because us, believers, the church, the collective, we are called brothers and sisters. That God is forging and knitting together a family of all kinds of people. And he gives us a small picture of that with Simon and Andrew, James, and John. That those were 4 brothers, literally intermixed with the other 12, right? Because there's something about family that Jesus values. And there's also something unique about your brother or your sister that's not true of many other people in your life. They are the most annoying people and the most insufferable humans that you know. You can't stand them half the time. Why? Because you can't get away from them. Like, they're in your house. Like, I can't kick them out. Mom and dad won't let me. And there's something beautiful about that. Why? Because the hardest people for you to get along with are 4 of the 12 that Jesus called to be in the inner ring. It's fascinating. And then look at Matthew and Simon the Zealot. This is my favorite. Who is Matthew? A tax collector. What did that mean? The dude worked for Rome. He was in government. He had a government position, working against his own people to tax them for the Roman government. He walks into the room, and then who walks in after him? Simon the Zealot. Who's that guy? A guy devoted to overthrowing the government. My life's ambition is to topple this evil regime, and I hate all of you. And Matthew walks in, and you know Simon walked in and was like, hey guys, gonna be part of the team. What, him? What? No, no, no. Jesus? Ugh! What is he doing? You know he was so mad. And Jesus said, oh yeah, him. That's right. Get over here. Yeah, that's how I roll. And if you want to roll with me, you're going to have to roll with him. And that's how he designed it. And then you just get a list of the other names. Thaddeus, Bartholomew, James the Lesser, right? Who are they? I don't know. You can go dig up some history books on it. Maybe it'll tell you a little bit. The scriptures themselves don't talk about those guys at all. You just get their names. Why is that important? Sometimes you don't get the recognition you think you deserve. Sometimes you just do the work for the sake of the work, and you get no notoriety from it. Those are my favorite kinds of people. Those are your favorite kinds of people. The people that work in the shadows, that you know are busting it, and they're making it happen, and without them, this whole thing falls down. That person is so integral, and nobody knows their name, but you know them. We love that kind of person. Why? Because there's something beautiful about working in humility and working with no desire to be glorified. I don't care if you even know my name. James is happy just to get a sentence, just to have his name put on the list. That was good enough. And that makes sense. Why? Because what did Jesus tell the 12? Don't be so happy that you are named among my disciples. You should be a lot happier your name is written in heaven. You should be a lot more stoked that your name is written on the tablet of eternal life than on this little piece of paper in a book. And I'm not demeaning the scriptures. I'm just telling you, there is a fundamental shift in the value. Your name being written in the book of life and somebody complimenting you and clapping for the job you did don't even compare to one another. And that's okay. And I think Jesus wants us to get that. You can do a good job, and you can teach and lead, and you can be a blessing to others and get no recognition for it, and that's okay. And I should be okay with that. I really ought to. And sometimes you got to pray for that, because it doesn't come naturally to us. And then lastly, who's the last person we see on the list? Who's always on the list? He's listed in Mark, Luke, and in Matthew. Judas. Why is he last? Because he's the guy who betrayed Jesus, right? He's what we call a non-believer. He's what we call the 10%. In special forces, there's a saying. There's always a 10% that make it through selection, that fiddled through the cracks, and somehow got here, and they never should have been. There's always going to be that guy in your office. There's always going to be that person in your family. There's always going to be that neighbor. That's the 10%. They shouldn't be here. They're not qualified. Nobody wants them here. But here they are. And you got to deal with them. And the other 11, they had to deal with Judas. Now, is Jesus sovereign and able to temper and restrain the evil that's inside of Judas to accomplish his purposes? Absolutely. That's a whole other sermon, and a deep theological one as well. How he can do that for 3 years until it's time for Judas to betray Jesus. He can do that. But that's not the point here. The point that you see here, and that it's listed, Judas, the one who betrays Jesus, is so that you know Jesus understands what it's like to be stabbed in the back. Jesus knows what you feel like when the person you love the most and you are closest to the most turned on you and completely devastated you. For a lot of us, that's our spouse. Nobody can hurt you like your spouse. Nobody has that kind of access to your heart. Nobody has that kind of access to your life than he or she does. And that can be the hardest and most brutal of turnings. And in that moment, you're like, I wish someone knew how this felt, because it feels so painful. Jesus does. He knows what it's like to have one of his best friends betray him to death. Not said some mean things on social media, not posted an ugly picture of you and made fun of you, handed you over for someone to kill you. That's brutal. That's dark. And that's one of the guys in the group. All manner of people. All kinds of backgrounds. Why? Because Ephesians 2 is what we've been reading a lot in our Bible studies. And this is what it says. This is why it's important for these 12 to be so random. Ephesians 2:20. Having been built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Christ Jesus himself being the cornerstone, in whom the whole building, fitted together, is growing into a holy temple in the Lord, in whom you also are being built together into a dwelling of God in the Spirit. This is not just something that randomly happened and then it was over. It fizzled out. This is something that started in Matthew 10, and it has gone on for 2,023 years. Plus or minus 30, whatever. And you are here, and I am here. Why? Because this ragtag bunch of weirdos grabbed the message and grabbed the authority and the power through Jesus and turned the world upside down. And we're a product of that today. And we're supposed to be continuing the foundation that they laid. That you join yourself together with people that are not like you at all, that are so different, difficult, hard to deal with. Why? So that your sanctification can be complete. So that you can pray with one another and bear their burdens. So that you can serve the undeserving person, the least likely person. It's good for your soul. It's good for us that we live into Ephesians 2, and that God is building this up as a holy building. It's not up to you. It's up to me. God knits us together through his Spirit. Are there things for us to do? Yes. Are there things for you to do? Yes. But where does it always start? Called by Jesus to be with Jesus. Called to Jesus, summoned for the purposes he has for your life. And then what? He grabs you and he throws you in a room with an us. That he gives you an us to run with. 12 people? 20 people? 100 people? 2 people? I don't know. But you're never meant to walk this journey alone. You are not an island unto yourself. And you are not figuring this out, fumbling through all by yourself. That is not a thing you see in Scripture. And it's not for us. So take heart. Let this resonate with you. And hopefully change the way you see the world and others around you, and change the way you see us. And maybe yourself and what your purposes are in it. Let me pray.